Excellent. Okay. So thank you everyone for being here. And I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Michael Amster. I'm the field deputy for Los Angeles Councilwoman Tracy Park for the Brentwood, Palisades, and Sawtell area. By the way, one of my colleagues in the Councilwoman Tracy Park's office who's here as well is Matthew Halden, who's the field deputy for Mar Vista Del Rey and one of the leads in our office on the special project of the community. And we're here today to talk about one of the vexing issues that's been afflicting the communities that we represent in Council District 11 and frankly throughout the state of Los Angeles and perhaps throughout the entire state of California, which is the presence of coyotes where they should not be. And we have today a 1.5 hour briefing for all of you. We're going to more or less run through it. So the first, I'm going to pass it off to Jessica West from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. She was able to be a part of, well, not just participate, but present in last year's briefing, and I'm really glad that we got her here as well. We also got here again from LA Animal Services, Vanessa Rodriguez. Thank you so much, Vanessa, for being here again and as well. And in addition to that, we have the Agricultural Commissioner's office that is here as well. We have Elizabeth Bondi here, and we may have others from the Commissioner's office. I'm not sure, but in any event, we'll wait. And after the discussion and presentation from those three, please save time for your questions for Q&A at the end of the presentation. I want to make sure that we get through as many questions as possible. If we're not able to get through everyone's questions by around 7:30, we'll do our best to follow up as best we can. But the one thing that I do want to highlight for our reference, the best way to submit questions is in the activities section of this Google Meet feature. On the bottom right, you'll see the activities button, and there underneath activities, you'll see the Q&A function. You press that Q&A function, and you can submit a question through there. That'll be very helpful for us in helping me organize a Q&A. With that, before we move forward, I'd like to present a short video from Councilwoman Tracy Park. So one moment, guys.
Hey everyone, it's Councilwoman Tracy Park. Welcome to my annual Coyote Safety Briefing. I'm incredibly grateful that you've taken the time to be here this evening to learn more about the very important issue of coyotes in and around our community. As we all know, the city of Los Angeles is made of an incredibly diverse tapestry of neighborhoods, and we have a wide range of issues. However, if there's one challenge that many, if not all Angelino communities share, it's the presence of coyotes that threaten our beloved pets, and in some of the very worst cases, even people. To keep coyotes away from our neighborhoods, it's important for our communities to come together and use the best practices for coyote prevention. In this briefing, we're going to hear from experts on coyotes and the best ways to address and deter their presence. Additionally, your questions will be taken at the end of the presentations. Your safety is our top priority, so thank you again for being proactive by joining us tonight, and I look forward to working with you all to continue building a better 11.
Okay, so with that, now that you've heard from your councilwoman, I will now move by unpinning myself, and now I will pass it off to Miss Jessica West. So I will pin you for everyone, Jessica. Okay, so with that, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Michael. And just making sure right now everyone's just seeing one big slide, correct? Okay. Hopefully. I don't hear anybody, so hopefully it's working proper.
It's
But
the main slide and then the list of the other slides on the side.
oh, okay. That's good to know. Okay, but no notes or anything, so that's perfect. Just
Right.
that's okay if you folks are seeing the other slides. You're just getting a sneak peek then, a little preview.
Well,
Okay,
I just
perfect.
you see the notes at the bottom of those slides right there.
Oh, you do see notes?
I do see notes.
Oh, okay. I actually do not see my notes. Let me see then. Sorry, folks, bear with us. I'm not quite used to using Meet Google, so I'm trying to figure out my way around here, but let's see. Maybe what I can do. Let's see.
I don't see them any longer. There we go.
Okay, perfect. That should work then. Okay, sorry about that, folks. Hopefully, well, actually here, let me actually increase it a bit then. Maybe that will help. I think right now folks are just able to see my screen itself, which is probably why I'm running into this issue. But as long as you're seeing that, I think we're good. And yes, please just ignore the ones on the left there. I'll try to make it a little smaller. But okay, let's go ahead and get started then. Thank you so much, folks, for bearing with me. And yes, hello and good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Jessica West, and I am a human wildlife conflict specialist with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And again, I'd like to thank the Office of Councilwoman Tracy Park for the opportunity to speak with you folks this evening. And tonight, we're first going to be talking a little bit about coyote biology. We're going to move into then a little bit of conflict coyote management and what that actually means. Like, what is a conflict coyote? And then last but not least, we'll also be moving into how do we actually prevent conflicts with coyotes and honestly, lots of other different wildlife across the state. So my goal really this evening is to provide folks with that information that's hopefully going to empower both you and your neighbors while really helping you with that knowledge that should help you succeed in trying to prevent conflicts with coyotes. And I'll also be happy to take any questions at the end. As Michael had noted, it looks like we'll have a Q&A function, which is excellent. But I'm also going to be providing my contact information if you'd like to get in touch with me after offline. So let's go ahead and move right along then. So I did also just want to provide a very brief acknowledgement, kind of the elephant in the room here, right? You know, we recognize that, to say the least, human wildlife conflict it's challenging, right? It's complex, it's contextual, it is complicated. Attitudes, values, perception, tolerance of wildlife is going to vary widely across the state. But we do also recognize that our community, our knowledges, our identities, traditions, you know, these are all interconnected with our natural resources. And so we as the department are here to help those communities address those conflicts as proactively as possible whenever possible. And hopefully today's information from each of the speakers will help you to do just that going forward. And so some folks might actually not be familiar with who we are as the Department of Fish and Wildlife. So I just wanted to show this quick slide that just kind of very quickly shows exactly who we are, what we do. You may know us as the Department of Fish and Game. We are actually the same agency, but we did change our name back in 2013, basically to better represent the fact that we don't just manage game or hunted species, but actually we manage a lot of different species throughout California. We're also a regulatory, conservation-based management agency for wildlife in California. And really our goal is to implement that policy that is established by the Fish and Game Commission. So we are actually essentially just the messengers, right? It's actually a Fish and Game Commission that really create these laws, these regulations, these codes that and policies that we then as the department actually follow. But we're also tasked with protecting and maintaining healthy wildlife populations. And again, like I said, it can be complicated, right? We're also overseeing recreational, commercial, scientific, educational use. But really, again, it's important to note that human wildlife conflict has been evolving over time and just our response to it as well. So, and we recognize that those values and perceptions of wildlife are going to change a lot within the department. So we've really been trying to address these things proactively as much as possible. So moving right along, let's first get into a little bit about coyotes in general, because really, if you're going to be interested in trying to manage a species, it's kind of important to know a little bit more about their biology, their behavior. And so here's a little bit of coyote biology, 101. So most folks, I think, are fairly confident in their identification skills for a coyote, but sometimes they are misidentified as dogs or foxes, depending on the age. But really what you're looking for is that long, narrow snout. They have almost always a bushy, black-tipped tail, and they tend to be more of a rusty brown gray coloration. Adults, believe it or not, really can max out at about 35 pounds in California. And even then, that's really kind of at the higher end. Most coyotes are somewhere in between 18 to 35, but they often just look a lot bigger than they actually are.
Jessica, I apologize. Are we supposed to be like seeing slides at this point right now?
Oh, yes, you are. Are those not showing?
Correct. I believe you were at slide 7.
Okay. Let me see. Can you see the slide right now that says Coyote Biology 101? Is that what's showing? Sorry, I'm hoping someone might be able to confer with me here. Is that what's showing right now, Coyote Biology 101?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Apologies, folks. I can't see all the comments. Thank you for pointing that out. I do apologize. Hopefully now going forward, everybody can see this correctly. Sorry about that, folks. Like I said, technical issues, but okay, moving right along. So home range size for coyotes, this will vary quite a bit. And it kind of just depends again on the size of the family group, the resources that are available, but really it's going to be somewhere between about 1 to 15 square miles. Coyotes are omnivores as well. So they are going to be primarily eating, believe it or not, they actually eat a lot of plant material. They do eat meat, of course. They are opportunistic hunters and scavengers, and really they are going to eat what is available and easy to access to them. Social behavior for these guys, again, they may be traveling in family groups, somewhere anywhere between 2 to 10, or maybe as a mated pair, or sometimes, honestly, coyotes too can just be individuals, and it just kind of depends on the structure of the other coyote groups, in the area. But really, it kind of runs the gamut as far as, just how social they actually are. And then I've also listed here, and this is a very big estimate, but this is our statewide population estimate, somewhere between 250,000 to likely 750,000 coyotes across all of California. It can be really challenging to try to get correct numbers for these animals, just because we know they're obviously very abundant. We know that they are common on the landscape, but these are just estimates, and I know it's kind of a big one. And then just a quick note here too, that they are typically living anywhere from about 6 to 10 years. So coyotes can actually occur in every single habitat type throughout California. This includes our deserts, our rivers, our corridors, marshes, grassland, chaparral, forest, you name it, coastline. Basically, again, coyotes, they are everywhere. As you can see on this range map off to the right-hand side here, you're probably looking at this and saying, well, the whole thing looks green, and you're correct. That is because these are, known habitat types and areas for coyotes. And data does show that in recent decades, there have been more numerous coyotes, in suburban environments where there's ample food that's available. And actually, we think, right, just based off some local research by universities and other governmental agencies, that there's probably some of the highest population densities on record are occurring in suburban Southern California. I did just want to throw this slide in here as well real fast, just because, like I said, sometimes, folks might misidentify or view a coyote or a dog as very similar in size. And of course, we know dogs run the gamut when it comes to size as well. But this is just a comparison, just showing you that, again, the average coyote is really only going to be about 18 to 35 pounds. They're only going to weigh they're only going to be about 1 to 2 feet high and about 4 feet long. And there's no evidence to suggest that coyotes are getting larger in Southern California. So I did also want to just make note about vocalizations for coyotes, just because I think one of the most common questions we get is, or comments is, folks hear coyotes howling or singing, and they say, oh no, that means that they've now killed something or they've predated on something. But actually, Coyotes, it's really just going to be what we call Coyote GPS. It's really just trying to communicate with family. It's warning of danger, territorial defense, since they are very territorial, being a canine species. It does not mean that they have attacked or killed an animal. In fact, that would actually be a little bit counterintuitive for coyotes, because if they were to have found some kind of prey animal, they wouldn't want to advertise that to other packs. But again, very common. Coyotes definitely do a lot of vocalizing. They're actually known as song dogs as well for that reason. But just a note there, since that is one of the most common kind of comments that we get about these guys. And sorry, this is a little bit of a wordy slide. If this was functioning correctly, it would have showed up nicely point by point for you. So again, thanks for bearing with me here. But I did want to note reproduction, since this is really important to talk about with coyotes. So going just kind of starting here at the top with time frames. So mating season or breeding season is usually going to be about January to March. They're only breeding once a year, and it's the sort of alpha male and female within a family group that will do this. And pup rearing, which is what we're in the middle of right now, that's going to be occurring April through August. And there's usually about 5 to 6 young that are born at that time. They're weaned at about 5 to 6 weeks old, and they're going to leave that den or that natal group between 6 and 9 months old. They do den definitely in areas that have minimal human disturbance, usually things like, as you can see here, like rocky crevices, areas that are densely vegetated, where there's culverts. We've seen them actually doing this under, freeway culverts, hollow logs, but they will absolutely den, within urban and suburban areas. In fact, we do hear of them sometimes denning under crawl spaces. So just something to be aware of. It, again, just kind of depends on the coyote and how comfortable they actually are with being around people. But the next point is what I really wanted to talk about here, which is escorting behavior. So this, I would say, especially this time of year, is going to be one of the most common behavior that gets reported to us as the department. So typically what's going on here is, if there is some kind of an active den or some kind of resource, that those coyotes are actively defending, they will do what's known as this escorting behavior, where they quite literally and persistently will follow either a person or a dog, basically anything that they're viewing as a potential threat or competitor. And this is really trying, or they are trying to encourage that, I have it in quotes here, intruder to leave that particular area, right, that they're actively defending. Sometimes we do hear about coyotes almost like healers, which are bred to chase after, livestock and cattle. Coyotes will sometimes actually do some of that nipping behavior as well. And it is essentially herding, similar to what domestic dogs will do in those livestock operations. And it is just trying to get you or your dog to leave an area. And in most cases, the good news is just leaving that area, is going to prevent most of those interactions. If it's somewhere along, say, a walking path or a trail, we do recommend that, whoever is overseeing that trail system, maybe if it's possible to either close it down for a couple of months, maybe just put up notices if you're able to install some kind of barriers to where you think the den might be, and just trying to prevent, immediate access within a certain area around that den. That's really key. It's just about trying to allow these coyotes to do that denning behavior in a safe way that is safe for the coyotes, but of course safe also for the public. So just wanted to make note of that, since again, one of the most common things we hear about with coyotes. And then last slide before we move on to our other topic, which is management of coyotes. I wanted to just very quickly touch on rural versus suburban coyote behavior, since there's a little bit of a difference here. So rural coyotes, they're mostly going to be active at dawn, dusk, and nighttime, which is kind of what we would expect for coyotes and a lot of other wildlife. However, as it would turn out, a lot of our urban and suburban coyotes can actually be a little bit more active during day or night. And so that switch, in that sort of nocturnal versus diurnal behavior, we think is really related to just how tolerant they become of people. Food and water, right, is so abundant on the landscape that it basically becomes worth what we say the risk for coyotes to be present, even when there are people, dogs, cars, what have you around. And it does offer them some protection, right, from larger predators. So they have learned that, probably not going to be encountering a mountain lion, or obviously not so much here in Southern California, but wolves, which would also push out coyotes. So yeah, they are incredibly intelligent, and they've learned, by being in these cities, they actually have some level of protection in that way. And it is important to note that coyotes, they really are not interested in interacting with people, they by nature. Really what happens is they start to lose that natural fear of people, especially when they begin to associate humans with food. And we'll get into that a little bit more as we address coyote management in general. So moving on then, now we know a little bit more about coyotes. Let's actually learn how the department, as well as other agencies and nonprofits as well, even work with coyotes. So I've been throwing this term around a little bit of conflict coyote. So what does that actually mean? Basically, this is a coyote that requires some kind of management action or response, whether that is from us as the department or CDFW. It could also be from city officials, sometimes the public, right? But it just kind of depends on what's actually happening, what behavior we're seeing, what the situation is like with these coyotes. And so this category of conflict coyote, it includes things like even just sightings. Some folks may just see a coyote and perceive that as conflict. And so that is looped in here, just seeing a coyote. General nuisance would be things like accessing trash, maybe digging up gardens. Depredation, this is when we're seeing more incidents of, coyotes interacting with domestic animals like dogs or cats that may be in backyards, unattended or off leash, that sort of incident. And then public safety, which is the much less common kind of conflict we see, but this involves a coyote that is actively acting aggressive right towards a person, or I should say, if there's been some kind of verified physical contact with a coyote and a person. So what that means is a bite, essentially. And so really that type of conflict is going to influence who is actually going to be responding in those kinds of situations. So I'll just talk a little bit about what we as the department are able to do with coyotes and kind of explain why. Obviously, Vanessa here as well will be able to explain a bit more about what the city does in regards to coyotes. But the role of CDFW in coyote management is primarily education. And that's because coyotes are considered a non-game species, which means that they can be lethally taken in any number at any time by any legal means. So that's kind of a lot of words, but really what that means is because they are not, they don't have those same level of protections, you could say, as like a mountain lion or a bear or a deer. And so they are just treated a little bit differently per our policies and what kinds of things we can and are able to do with our limited staff. So CDFW does not trap, relocate, or remove coyotes. We do not provide any sort of lethal management outside of verified public safety incidents. So like I mentioned previously, if there had been a confirmed bite on a person, our law enforcement with CDFW then would step in and then actually remove that coyote using DNA evidence to show that the correct coyote was taken in an incident like that. And so instead, like I said, we provide primarily education, advice to cities as well as HOAs, to really anyone who's interested in learning about coyotes. And we do this a lot through our community outreach. So the role of communities in coyote management, and again, this will be covered, I'm sure, by the city. But really, the best things that communities can be doing as far as coyote management goes is establishing and enforcing ordinances, that are going to be, I'm blanking on the word here, but enforced. Thank you. Just enforced. So that we're not feeding wildlife. Establishing some kind of response guidance or team for when coyote sightings are provided to the city for their knowledge. Even things like hazing opportunities, so local animal control, if that's a possibility, they could actually, and again, depends on the city, of course, but proactively haze coyotes. But really just establishing those protocols for some kind of response, right, that the city can take to reports of habituated or aggressive wildlife. And of course, just like us, cities are wonderful, excuse me, and communities are wonderful in providing kind of their own tailored education and outreach as well. So we do actually work as well with local police departments. Some of our volunteers have actually produced videos as well that have been shared on police websites and other city and county websites. So, we're happy to help as much as possible. But again, unfortunately, we're a very small team, and given just the sheer number of what we think, right, are the sheer number of coyotes in these areas, that is why we really do rely on our wonderful communities to actively manage coyotes as well. So lethal removal is an option for coyotes. And really what we suggest here is selectively trapping and euthanizing coyotes. So not an all out sort of, let's try to get, as many coyotes as we can within a community. But really, if we're seeing that escalation or what is being perceived as escalation in coyote behavior, these residents, communities, cities, you can actually selectively trap, those particular coyotes. And there's no permit or permission that's required from CDFW. Again, they're a non-game species, which means they really don't have those same level of protections as other wildlife do in the state. And in those situations, a licensed trapper would be hired to then humanely trap and remove those select coyotes within a given area. Take a very quick drink of water. I did also very quickly just want to mention, it can be obviously fairly challenging to accomplish this, especially with particular codes or policies that either we as the state have in place or even cities and counties. One code and regulation that I wanted to mention is this is California Code and Regs 465.5, which discusses how and when traps essentially can be placed for coyotes. So this is just a hypothetical map that shows that in order to actually place a trap at a given location, per this California Code and Regs stipulation, every person or occupied building or residence within 150 yards of that trap would actually need to be notified of the trap being placed and also give permission. And I can understand how that can certainly be frustrating for a lot of communities. It's definitely it's a big ask, but really the idea is that you're trying to avoid that bycatch, so letting others know, hey, make sure your dog or your cat, is not going anywhere near this trap. But also to, it allows for that community buy-in, just so that, if there are some folks who would be opposed to trapping coyotes, just being able to have that conversation with them. So really that's the idea behind it. But again, I understand that it can be a pretty difficult thing to do for a lot of situations. And then just again, to quickly discuss a little bit more about lethal removal. So like I've been saying, it is a good option for selective targeting of coyotes. In the long run, it has been shown that it's really not a long-term or effective solution to coyote numbers. Back in the 1800s and early 1900s, I mean, there was, frankly speaking, an all-out war against coyotes, not even just by us as the department, but all of these other agencies. There were bounties on coyotes for a very long time. And so I mention this only because, we really tried to hit them hard. And if anything, they've actually done better. We actually think there are more coyotes now than really kind of ever before. And again, there's a lot of research to back this up, but it basically shows that when you're trying to reduce coyote populations, they actually increase. And really, this is because, coyotes, when a space opens up, they are now going to fill it. They say, hey, there was this family group here. There's a ton more room now for us. Hey, the going's good. Let's go ahead and have more pups. This year, let's take over this space. And so really, I have a point here that it's food and competitors and space that are really going to be regulating coyote populations, and not necessarily that human intervention, for that reason of, we found that it's really not a long-term effective solution. And I did want to note as well that, coyotes are a native species in California. Obviously there are a lot of really diverse opinions about coyotes. Some folks absolutely love them. Some folks, wish they were not on the landscape at all. And we understand that, again, it's going back to understanding that everyone has different values and beliefs for coyotes and all wildlife, frankly. But it is important, I think, to note that they are a native species, and they do help to regulate rabbit and rodent populations. And you're probably scratching your head, more songbirds. So there's actually some data to show that where there are more coyotes, we actually have greater songbird abundance. And the idea is that coyotes are helping to manage other animals that might actually be predating on birds and eggs more regularly. So just some really interesting research that just kind of goes to show that, they do have a place on the landscape, but certainly, again, that's that public safety that's always going to take precedent. And I'll go over this a little quickly here just because I recognize I'm getting short on time. But again, one of the most common questions I think we get too as the department, and this goes for a lot of different wildlife, is, why don't we just relocate that coyote? Why it sounds like a good solution. It gets them out of the urban areas. But what we've actually realized over time is that these coyotes, when they get moved, they are much more likely to return to that same area they were moved from. Some of these coyotes are growing up in places like downtown Los Angeles. They don't know any other world. This is where they were born and raised. And so taking this urban coyote and then putting it out in what we might think is really suitable coyote habitat, it can almost be a death sentence for some of these individuals. And, we do think it kind of, again, it's just moving that conflict somewhere else, right? It's making it potentially another community's problem. It's sort of kicking the can down the line, we like to say. It's just opening up space for another coyote or another family group because they're so territorial. No matter where you put that coyote, there's almost certainly already going to be a resident coyote there. And I made a note here too. It's stressful. It's potentially dangerous for these animals. And I think just kind of a little anecdote is, what is the wild to a coyote? I already mentioned that we have coyotes that are growing up in these urban areas. That's really what they know best. And so if we don't fix the root of the problem, right, which is having food or water or shelter as well, just available, to these animals on the landscape, you're still going to continue to have coyotes and other animals down the line. So it's trying to look at things holistically and approaching it from that perspective. So moving on to the last topic of my presentation this evening. So now we know a little bit more about their biology, how they're managed. So how do we actually prevent conflicts with coyotes to begin with? And I think in a lot of ways, you can almost look at human-wildlife conflict like being healthy, right? We know that we need to eat well and exercise to keep ourselves, out of the doctor's chair, as they say. But sometimes we might not heed that advice, right, until we're already experiencing health problems. And so similar to, staying healthy, we know that there are things we can be doing right now to try to prevent this conflict. And so it's, again, trying to be as proactive as possible, recognizing that, life is life, and obviously nothing is perfect. You can't 100% remove all conflict with animals and coyotes as well. But just taking those steps to try to prevent the conflict is really what's key here. And so the first and foremost, the number one recommendation I can make, especially when it comes to coyotes, is never feed wildlife, right? So whether that is intentionally or unintentionally, because when we do this, that natural barrier that exists between coyotes and wildlife and humans, it's removed. They start to associate people with food. They say, well, I walked up to this one person and they handed me, a sandwich. Well, gosh, maybe I should start walking up to every other person. Maybe they will also have sandwiches. So it's not necessarily looking at you or a person as food, but as a source of food, if that makes sense. And so we're really trying to avoid that from happening. And this is a little bit of a wordy slide, but just showing that it's actually against the law in a lot of places to feed coyotes and other wildlife. We have California code and regulations that talk about this and how it's actually defined as harassment when you are feeding wildlife, since it's disrupting normal behavior patterns. And even LA County has an ordinance against specifically, and you can see here highlighted, against feeding coyotes, as well as raccoons, foxes, and opossums. So it's serious. We actually do have these laws in place for a reason. And really the consequence of feeding wildlife, like I've already alluded to, is that once they start to associate people or activities or human use areas, even things like storage receptacles, right? So like trash cans, they're going to continue to look at these sources for food rewards. And it's what's known as food conditioning. They're becoming conditioned to finding food, in these particular areas. And the below image, I just wanted to show, these are some, of course, very well-meaning folks who, wanted to provide food to the coyote outside of this school. As you can see, though, they actually have a dog with them as well. Just really not a great situation, right? Because now this coyote is going to potentially, right, start looking at this area as, hey, sometimes when I'm here, I'm able to find food. And so that is really what we're trying to avoid, is situations like this. Oops, pardon me, going a little quick. And when we do this sort of food conditioning to coyotes and other wildlife, that proximity tolerance is going to go up for coyotes, right? So they're going to engage in riskier behavior. They're more likely to, right, approach people or approach buildings, and that potential for conflict, consequently is going to go up as well. And, the majority of bites that we hear about on humans, these were instances where coyotes were being fed. They start to potentially view even a hand, right, as this was a source of food in a different situation. Maybe it will be in this one, even though I don't necessarily see any food. So that's kind of trying to get into the minds of these coyotes, but that's really where a lot of this conflict stems from. But the good news is there are a lot of different ways, right, to prevent, obviously there are great ways to prevent feeding, which is by not feeding, but there are ways to prevent coyotes from necessarily wanting to hang out in certain areas or around certain people or buildings, and that's by the use of deterrence and hazing, which is just kind of a fancier word for scaring. So we kind of joke that scaring is caring when it comes to coyotes and a lot of our wildlife. And even though we're joking, this is a serious thing to consider. These are things that can be used to try to dissuade certain activities from wildlife. And really, we're trying to teach these coyotes and teach other animals that, that behavior or that activity that they're exhibiting in a particular area is just not going to end well, right? Not for the coyote, not for the person necessarily. And so things like air horns, emotion activated lights with sound, yelling, whistles, just some examples. And then you can see on the far right there, there's an image of a person who's actually taking a trash bag. And I believe this research was done in Canada, but they actually did a large hazing study on coyotes. And they found that one of the most effective ways to try to frighten away a coyote is by simply keeping an empty trash bag in your pocket and then taking it out, whipping it around like you were about to put it in a bin, just whipping it with the sound and the visual has been found to be pretty scary to a coyote and a lot of other animals. And just to note, it's not necessarily always appropriate to haze animals, right? So in situations where we have injured or sick animals, or again, kind of going back to that escorting behavior, if we have younger animals that are either near the den or with the family group, of course, in those situations, coyotes and other animals then are going to be more defensive, right? Because they now have either a resource that they're defending or they're young. And so hazing might not actually work a lot of times in those situations as well. But like most things in life, unfortunately, it is not 100% effective 100% of the time, right? These deterrents. Excuse me. So we do like to say that using several different kinds of deterrence and hazing methodology consistently and over time, that's going to be the most effective thing. And really, just like us, coyotes and other animals, they are individuals. They're going to show different levels of comfort to, to certain things or places. And sometimes these animals really do just need a little bit of time to learn how to respond, right, to certain kinds of deterrence. So we just say, keep at it. If it doesn't seem like it's working right now, it could just be that coyote has never been hazed before in its life with a whistle. And it's simply just trying to figure out if this is scary enough, basically, for it to want to leave. And I do like to mention as well that when you're looking to maybe install, some of these deterrents, check with city and county ordinances first. An example would be Coyote rollers, which I think folks might be familiar with, which kind of a make-at-home version would be things like a PVC pipe that can be placed at the very top of a fence into a yard. And the idea is that when the coyote actually tries to jump up and over into the yard, the rollers knock it back down since they can't gain traction. But I mention this here because there are some cities, right, that have ordinances against or they have height limitations for fences. And so if you were to install one of these coyote rollers, you may actually then be you know, out of you may not be following that ordinance anymore. So it's just something to be aware of when you're looking to install these kinds of things. And then going into the last bit of the presentation here, which is just some specifics, right, of things that you can be doing around your home, around the community. So in the backyard and your garden, cutting back vegetation that could potentially excuse me, remove hiding places for coyotes is a really good idea. Like I mentioned, they are typically looking for those kinds of really dense vegetated areas for dens. So sometimes just removing that vegetation can be enough to deter the coyotes from wanting to den there. Also, harvesting ripe fruit or vegetables, picking up that fruit off of the ground. There was a really interesting study done by the National Park Service in the Santa Monica Mountains that showed that coyotes actually eat a lot of fruit. They will eat figs, they will eat apricots, loquats. So just something to be aware of, right? We kind of think of fruit and vegetables as maybe attracting the rodents, but turns out the coyotes are interested in the fruit and vegetables as well, and then also the rodents who are attracted to both of those things. So just something to keep in mind. For garbage, we definitely recommend keeping it inside a garage or some kind of secure building until the morning of pickup. And also too, you know, if you're not able to bring it inside, if you're able to just bungee it against a wall and keep that lid bungeed as well, this is really helpful too, just for raccoons, but really just anything that might be interested in trying to access your trash, it's going to have a much harder time doing so. And then also, when it comes to bird feeders, we often joke that bird feeders are actually coyote feeders as well. So not necessarily that they're attracted to the birds, but actually the seeds as well. That's a really big caloric food reward for coyotes. So they will actually eat bird feeders or food from bird feeders. So we just recommend if you're trying to attract birds, maybe planting native plants to attract those birds and pollinators instead of putting out seed on the landscape. For dogs and cats, I know this is definitely, you know, at the forefront of a lot of folks' minds. I'm a small dog owner myself, and I definitely live in an area with coyotes. So these are all things that I do, you know, to prevent that kind of, or that level of conflict with coyotes. So keeping your pets indoors, you know, when they can't be closely monitored outdoors, making sure we're bringing those dogs inside, either into a kennel or again, just in the garage, somewhere where they're just going to be a little bit more secure. Again, coyotes can be active at any time of day, but we would sort of expect more of that that hunting behavior to be more prevalent at night. So keeping in our animals at night is key. And same for cats. Big proponent of catios, which is just a way to allow your cat to be able to enjoy the outdoors, but then still be safe and secure within a kennel, essentially. Making sure we're walking dogs on leash, of course, and keeping them no more than 6 feet away. We do advise not using extendable leashes, and really that's just because you know, the further away your dog or even your cat, if you walk them on leash as well, the further away that they are, the less control you're going to have over a situation where, you know, maybe a coyote comes around the corner, or even a dog, you know, something else comes around the corner. It's just, it's recommended to just keep them closer, just again, to try to have control at all times over that animal. Avoid walking pets at night, but if you do, just bring a flashlight, go in groups. You know, there's obviously safety in numbers. Making sure we're feeding cats and dogs indoors only. Again, their food can actually be a big attractant for coyotes as well. They will definitely eat dog and cat food. And then I mentioned the fence rollers here, the coyote rollers. So again, if you're able to do that and be in accordance with your local ordinances, it's something to look into. These fence rollers that go on top of the fence. And even things like, and I know this looks a little bit silly, but these armored vests that you can actually purchase for your animals. It kind of makes them look a little bit punk rock. I think they look pretty cool, but it's been, you know, it's a tool in the tool belt. You know, this is just a different methodology to try to prevent some kind of, physical contact between your animal and a coyote. I think I'll probably go past this one a little bit quickly since I don't think this is super pertinent to this group, but barnyard animals, essentially the same thing, right, as domestic animals. If we have rabbits or chickens, just making sure that we really are doing our best to completely secure them. For chicken pens, coyotes are wonderful diggers, as I'm sure a lot of folks know. And so making sure that we have either buried wire or some kind of concrete floor is a really good idea. And then just also trying to discourage those natural prey items, right? So the squirrels, rabbits, rats, gophers, to the extent possible, that can also be really beneficial in the long run. And then last but not least here, around the neighborhood, right? So securely closing off those crawl spaces under your homes, your porches, your decks. Again, just trying to remove any sort of available shelter or denning areas. Making sure that we're supervising children and encouraging group play, because again, safety in numbers. Of course, the more folks we have, the less likely you are to have an interaction with an animal. Installing those deterrents, right? So things like strobe lights, alarms, physical deterrence in some situations as well. Recreating in groups, again, just being safe with others. And then avoiding those paths, right, where we know there's a known den, or if we're seeing some kind of potentially seasonal increase, right, in coyote activity. And I recognize, again, that this is not necessarily doable for everyone, every city, every situation, but for places that, it is possible, it is a recommendation. And then carrying deterrents as well, right? So some folks like to carry a walking stick with them, just something to make themselves look bigger, something that can be used potentially to actually, make physical contact with a coyote if they needed to. Using an air horn, a whistle, some kind of noise maker, just something to try to frighten away that coyote if you were to have a close encounter with one. And I did want to mention, speaking of encounters, since this is another big question that we get is, well, what do I do if I actually see a coyote? And again, the usual scientific answer of it kind of depends on the situation. It could be a coyote that's escorting. It could be a coyote that is simply out on the landscape. But the number one thing you're going to want to do is just stop and don't run, which I know can be a little bit easier said than done. But really, it's just trying to stop and assess, right? If you have small dogs or children with you, pick them up and try to keep those large dogs close to you, like you can see this individual's doing in this image on the right. You're going to want to just avoid cornering that coyote. So giving them an area, to escape, just giving them room, right? Sometimes that's really all they need, is just giving them an escape route. Back away slowly in those situations. You're going to want to face that coyote and maintain eye contact. But if you're doing all of these things and the coyote is, for whatever reason approaching you, this is when, in those situations where, we don't necessarily know or think there's any kind of den or resource nearby, that's when you're going to get big, you're going to get loud, you're going to wave your arms over your head, you're yelling, you're making noises. And in those situations, you can also throw small objects. And then you're just going to want to continue backing away. Giving that coyote space and time to leave is honestly going to prevent most of those really close interactions. And I would say the majority of coyote interactions are really going to be sightings. It's hopefully something that can be, for some folks enjoyed. Just seeing them on the landscape is not inherently a danger. But of course, there are going to be these situations, right, where you need to then defend yourself or try to make yourself look bigger. And one quick plug here as well. I did want to note our volunteer program, which is Wildlife Watch. This is a really, really cool program. It's actually a community-based program that our trained volunteers help to manage. So they will actually work with city officials and residents to address ongoing conflict. They'll try to resolve it, through education, through outreach. And really what's really cool about Wildlife Watch is these folks actually work with those government personnel, and they provide support and training to develop these wildlife management plans that are going to be really specific to the constituent needs, like I've noted here, specific to cities, to local municipalities, really just trying to get at the heart of, what is going on in District 11? What is it that's different here that might be different in, say, some of the foothill communities, along the 210 corridor. So really trying to get at that and working with the communities to, again, just proactively address these kinds of sightings and conflict before it hopefully does not escalate. And so with that, I did just want to provide 3 big takeaways, since I know that was a lot of information, and I appreciate everybody for sticking with me here. But the biggest takeaways that I want to give are, number 1 is giving respect, right? So recognizing that coyotes are intelligent, they're adaptable, they do share the landscape with people, and they're going to continue to share the landscape if you know, the data shows this. And taking that action, right, is trying to take those actions now to protect people, our property, our pets, and absolutely making sure we're not feeding coyotes, again, whether that is directly or indirectly, and then staying safe. So awareness is absolutely going to be the best prevention for human-wildlife conflict. And so with that, I'll go ahead and just leave the slide up here for just a moment, but I just wanted to thank everyone again for the invitation to the council person's office. And here I do have some website information. You can visit our Human Wildlife Conflicts Toolkit, which is really cool. We've got a bunch of information here that goes into coyotes, bears, lions, everything you'd ever want to know about ways to prevent conflict with these species. We do have an online reporting system as well that I would highly encourage folks to use. You can report sightings, incidents with wildlife, and that's just really important data for us as the department to know, just so that we can try to keep a pulse on, you know, where we're seeing these sort of hotspot zones with certain species. I've also listed a couple of phone numbers here as well. These are kind of the best ways to get in touch with a staff member over the phone. And then my email is here as well. So again, feel free, I'm leaving this up here for just a moment if folks want to take a screenshot or a picture with their phone. But with that, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and happy to answer any questions at the end of the evening. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Jessica. Let me take a moment to unpin this. All right, that was incredibly helpful for me. I'll just speak for myself. I'm sure we all got a lot out of that. So now I'm going to pass it off to City Animal Services, Vanessa Rodriguez. So Vanessa, again, thank you for joining, and I now pass it off to you to build upon this presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me back here. I'm so happy we're doing this again. I just love listening to Jessica's spiel. It's great information. So for the sake of not being repetitive, everything that she said is exactly what we go by as well. And so I'm here. I'm from the city of Los Angeles Animal Services Wildlife Team. And I also do provide education to the community. What I do is I'll speak to anybody on the phone, via emails. I could go out to the properties and inspect the properties and make recommendations, suggestions, point out where a problem area might be, say overgrowth, things like that. So I'm always available to help anybody with any concerns that they have. If they have anything on their property that is attracting any type of wildlife, I'm here to help. We do also enforce the laws for the city of Los Angeles. There are, like she was saying, that are laws against feeding the wildlife. So we do enforce that if we get a report of anybody that's doing it. And we also don't pick up, relocate, or trap healthy wildlife or coyotes. We will go out and pick up a coyote if it can no longer move. So if it's so sick or injured, it cannot walk anymore, we'll go out and pick it up. Depending on its injuries or illness, we'll assess it. Our medical staff will assess it, and they'll reach out to our local wildlife rescues, and they'll let them know, this is what's going on with the coyote. Are you willing to take it in for rehabilitation? And they'll let us know whether or not they can rehab it, or if it has to be euthanized. So they'll let us know about that. So I've been with the department for about 20 years, and just this last 2 years on the wildlife team. There are on our website, you could go to and see all of our links for the different animals that are living in the city of Los Angeles. And when you click on each tab for each animal, you'll get a lot of information. So there's also 2 videos there regarding coyotes and how to haze them. Great videos. So if you wanted to go there, I put our website link in the chat. And if you ever need to get in contact with me, the best way to get in contact with me is my email, which I'll also put in the chat. That's the best way to get in contact. Our phone system is pretty busy with other calls. So if you ever need to reach out to me, just contact me via email. So that's about all I have to say. If anybody has any questions for me, I'm going to be here to answer.
We will we'll hold off questions again. But what I do want to briefly I do want to just briefly share my screen to share the website that you put up. So
Thank you.
so there's that right there, and as you go down, you'll see that there's plenty of information about coyotes, as well as all the other wildlife that share the city with us. So there's that as well that you'll see in the chat, as well as your email. So thank you for that, Vanessa. I will now.
I'll also say that on our website, you're going to also see a link for our wildlife webinar. I hold a wildlife webinar once a month on the third Tuesday of every month, also at 6 p.m. So if anybody has any questions that they want to jump on or watch, they can also jump on, and I have that once a month.
Excellent. Okay, so so with that, thank you, Vanessa. With that, I now turn to Elizabeth with the County Agricultural Commissioner. One moment, please. Okay. All right. And thank you so much, Elizabeth. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you. So I would also like to second great presentation, Jessica. I don't really have that much to add. I think probably the only thing that wasn't mentioned was outdoor cats, which is a hot topic a lot of the time. So yeah, there are a few studies out there in LA as well where outdoor cats or community cats make up a really big part of the urban coyote diet. So there's not much advice on that. Being outdoors always presents an inherent risk. So the Humane Society does provide some tips, such as, like Jessica was saying, for your actual pets, limited time feeding, definitely taking food sources away, especially by nightfall. And then if there's not a lot of trees in the environment, creating artificial trees called cat posts, so a 4-inch by 4-inch piece of wood that goes 8 to 10 feet tall, or just creating escape routes for these cats. So that's definitely one of the top human coyote conflicts out there that I come across. And yeah, those tips aren't going to stop the coyotes from trying to take the cats, but it might increase their survivability. So as for my department's responsibility, so I'm with the LA County Department of Agriculture. We do not have any jurisdiction over the city of Los Angeles, but we do provide supplemental help. So I provide a lot of public education in LA City as well. I answer all reports that come into our website. That's at least that's underneath the 10 freeway. I have coworkers that service those other areas. So let me go ahead and paste. Oh, yeah, thank you. I'll go ahead and paste my, our wildlife report or coyote sighting form as well. And yeah, I will work with LA city officials. I actually just talked with Matt Halden a few weeks ago about coyote issues in Mar Vista. So yeah, I can also provide feet on the ground, provide advice to the people who are in charge of your area, and do site visits as well.
Excellent. So thank you so much, Elizabeth. I'm now going to unpin you. And I guess at this moment, we've had our presentations now, and I don't see any questions in the formal Q&A. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now enable everyone to turn on their microphones, and I would ask that if you have questions, please raise your hand through the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen. And if you'd like to ask questions to our officials here, or even Council District 11, myself and Matt, this is the opportunity to do that. So does anyone have any questions at this moment? Okay, let's start with Sherry. Sherry, one moment. I don't believe you're unmuted. Let me see if we can. Let's see here. Sherry, are you able to unmute yourself?
Now I can. I was
there we
pressing the button, but it wasn't unmuting. Thank you to everybody that I have communicated with in the last month or so. I appreciate the responses. I am taking it all in, still just trying to reconcile. There's more coyotes, more animals suffering. What can be done? I'm not really sure. Other than trying to, engage the community to, I don't know, do what? I don't know that anybody in these neighborhoods have been feeding the animals more or providing more access to food. I'm not really sure. There's just more things happening like in our backyards, fenced, normal backyards. But I guess one specific question I have is, what if there's a den in somebody's backyard? Like, that's not good, right? I mean, we have a few hilly areas. It's one thing if they're at the Santa Monica Airport, or if they're at the vegetable gardens at the baseball field. I'm speaking, of course, of Mar Vista area. But what about if they're in backyards? Is that not a different situation that could or should be addressed if there's a den there? I don't know what that question is too.
Yeah, I can take a quick stab at that, but I think I will likely be referring to Vanessa and or Elizabeth for some follow-up. But no, and I think you bring up a really good point, Sherry, of, for some folks that's acceptable and for others it isn't, to have a den in their backyard. Yeah, I mean, there is that inherent concern then, right, of having a den of coyotes in a yard or in an area where they are further potentially habituating to people, or they're becoming food conditioned. I guess, unfortunately, there's not a whole lot that could be done other than that property owner taking some kind of action, against the den. But maybe, again, I can let Vanessa and Elizabeth speak to that a little bit more. But unfortunately, that's kind of, I think the option. But yeah, if they'd like to provide more insight.
Yeah, I'll give you a little. So yeah, that we can't force them or force anybody to do anything with their yard. All we could do is make recommendations and educate them. For the most part, people are willing to do so. There's maybe just 1 out of 20 who will just be like, well, I don't care. And so we can't tell them what to do with their own property. But I am there again to help people who do want to resolve this situation. So last week, I went out to a home in the Hollywood Hills. After advising her, what she can do, what steps she could take, she still was seeing the coyotes, and she thought that she did everything right. And I said, well, yeah, it does sound like it. Let me go out there and check things out. So I walked around her whole property, which is tiered in a hillside in the back, and I did end up finding the coyote den. So it was there, and she actually did everything she could. She had lots of good setups around her yard, and she's like, I am seeing less of them, but I still do see them. And so I pointed out, well, there it is right there. So what she's going to do, I was able to point out other shrubbery, which she didn't think the coyote was going to be able to hide there. But I was like, no, it's actually very perfect for them to hide there. And so there was probably about 5 different types of shrubs and trees that were overgrown that she's going to trim up and trim back on. And then also, continue her hazing. And eventually, with all the hazing, the trimming back, the Coyote mom, she'll eventually move her pups somewhere else where she thinks is safer.
And one other thing from the perspective from the council office is that when it becomes clear that coyotes are inhabiting a certain area, it could be a sign that there's a property owner that is not meeting their obligations underneath the city code to perhaps secure their property or something else. And when you have a situation like that where a home or any other type of building is left open to the general public and very easy to access, whether a coyote is able to access or whatever, but the coyotes there could be a sign that there's that the obligation to secure one's property is not being met. That is something where the council office reaching out to us, we can work with the Department of Building and Safety in the city to check out a property and assess whether it's being secured or if there's any other potential code violations that need to be addressed. And if they do need to be addressed, then the department can begin the process of issuing notices to the property owners and, if necessary, orders. So I hope that answers your question, Sherry.
I wanted to add again with the situation in the Hollywood Hills, and I'm also doing the same thing with the Mar Vista area. And what happened in the Hollywood Hills is a different person had complained about the coyotes in the area, and there was a large group of homes that had a lot of overgrowth. I tried to make as much contact with as many homes as I could, but some people weren't home, and then half of it was a gated community that I couldn't access. So what I did was I went to Google Maps, looked for the addresses, and I mailed them out my information, letting them know that there's somebody in the neighborhood that's concerned about coyotes, and I saw they had overgrowth in their backyard. And that's how this lady reached out to me to let me go ahead and inspect her backyard. So I'm also doing the same thing with the Mar Vista area, sending out notices to all the addresses in the problem area in hopes that somebody will reach out to me, because some of the times people don't even know it. They don't go in their backyard. And that's why the overgrowth is there. So they're like, oh, I didn't know there was a problem. Oh yeah, I'll trim back. So a lot of the times I run into that also.
Okay. So can I ask a follow-up question? So really, the only time that, other than to provide education, any of the city or state departments will assist is if there's a bite to a human or a charging of a human or something where a human is in danger. That's basically, unless we're looking for education, there's no, or education or tips or whatever. That's right. That's kind of the limit of accessing support.
Speaking from the state in regards to lethal methodology for selective removal of coyotes, that is correct. And that is, again, just from the state, right? There has to be some kind of verified bite, or well, I should say it's typically when there is a verified bite. And I preface, of course, I'm not law enforcement. I can't necessarily speak on their behalf. I'm just with the wildlife management folks. But they actually do make that ultimate determination. So they get a report to them and then they take it from there. So a lot of that information I'm actually not even privy to myself, just because I'm outside of the law enforcement realm. But again, that's just how the state approaches coyotes.
Okay. And when you, in your, I think it was slide 14, you said something about establishing a response team of this from the city. What did that mean exactly?
Yeah, no, thanks. That's a good question. So in regards to when volunteers like our wildlife watch group can actually work with a city, or even, as wildlife management, like myself and my other small team, we can then connect with city officials who have questions, who say, hey, we're having these issues. Are there particular ordinances you would recommend? Or, so providing that level of support. So I apologize. I recognize that wasn't worded necessarily correctly, but trying to provide that support from the back end, if that answers your question.
But establishing a response team, that means we, or through that volunteer, that we work through that organization to establish a channel of communication to other departments, city and state departments.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that would pretty much be up to the city or the officials that we're working with. What that's in reference to is city officials creating some kind of response guidance, to those kinds of incidents. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we go to the city and then the city figures out what the response team might
Typically,
look like.
yes.
If there should be
Or
one.
the city is working directly with our volunteer group as well. That's another option too. But just trying to get that information to then come up with that guidance for a response team. Sorry, I know it's a little wordy, but
Yeah, there's also other jurisdictions, other cities that have official documents called the Coyote Management Plan. The city of LA does not have one, but there's a lot of examples like the city of Long Beach, Inglewood, where it's around a 20-page document that lists coyote biology and then everything that the city will take for every coyote action. It's a tiered response plan.
Yeah, okay, I think I've seen that. Okay.
With that, I guess let me turn it to Diane Wolfberg, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to bother people, but when I find tufts of coyote hair in my driveway, I'm in a canyon and my neighbors frequently see coyotes. Do you want it reported every time, or is that a pain, just bothering you? And I'm not seeing the coyotes, but every time I mention to a neighbor, they say, oh yeah, well, we saw, one recently. Does it help you to keep a record if you know every time there's a new tuft of hair in my driveway? And
yeah, I was gonna say, Vanessa, would you like to take that one?
No, yeah, that wouldn't be something that we would log as a report.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. So any further questions, follow-ups, anything of that nature? This current moment. Well, one thing that I do kind of want to point out, when we talk about deterring coyotes, that I would ask Jessica, Vanessa, and Elizabeth to build upon if possible is one of the things that comes to mind is that we're trying to meet environmental goals, and part of that we need a compost. In order to compost, we have to put our scraps in the green bin and everything like that. I guess I just want to ask is it possible that not properly securing scraps in the green bin, or just leaving a green bin full out too long? Could that be a possible, Cody? Just one like that, or any other type of human activity that inadvertently attracts coyotes? I would just offer that to you as something that may be a problem out there.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And absolutely, compost can be, and 100% is, an attractant for wildlife and coyotes. I'm not sure if folks have any particular suggestions, but one that kind of comes to mind as far as compost goes, there are the rolling type compost bins. So not necessarily one that's sitting above ground or connected to the ground, if that makes sense, to where a coyote could actually dig underneath the bin. Maybe not using that style, but rather the rolling type that are actually propped up on a stand. And then of course, just making sure that lid is securely closed. That will also prevent access, hopefully then, from rodents as well, which can also be an attractant for coyotes, as we know. But yeah, absolutely. And yeah, those are just my quick thoughts thinking about compost. It's a really good question, Michael.
Thank you. Yeah, it's one of those things that comes to mind. I mean, even when I'm personally taking out the trash myself. So, any other further questions from the folks here?
Oh, I just wanted to add one thing too. You could also think of freezing your compost as well. That's what I do. If you have some freezer space, it does decrease the odors a little bit and probably stops the raccoons and coyotes from eating frozen chunks of stuff. So, but yeah, I asked, I forgot who it was. I think the tree people or some agency the same question when the state made green waste mandatory for everyone, and yeah, they didn't really have any answers on pest attractions. So I think that's just something that we're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, that's a good point, Elizabeth. And I'll tell you too, you know, I do primarily work with bears and lions, and for bears, that's been a really big, not source of contention, but but for discussion, right? Because right now folks are having to compost, which is great. You know, that's an excellent way to utilize those scraps of food. But the compost bins themselves that were provided by some of these, you know, these communities or the cities aren't necessarily bear resistant. And so now we just have a non-bear resistant compost bin out there that's feeding bears in a lot of these communities. So yeah, I feel your pain. It's definitely, it's a good thing, but it was kind of a, uh-oh, we didn't think about this sort of thing.
There we go. More work that we as a government need to solve step by step. But with that, any other additional questions or comments?
I have just one very quick comment, and I hope you don't
Yes.
mind me pointing you out here, Sherry, to embarrass you. But thank you so much. You've been so wonderful at just connecting with everybody between the state, the city. You know, I know you've connected with other governmental agencies. So I just wanted to thank you for your proactiveness and understanding too, while we're trying to, you know, work on this conflict together as a community, because it really is, you know, what's needed. It does take that community perspective, because even if you yourself are doing one thing, you know, or I should say, if you yourself are doing everything correctly, but there's maybe, you know, one neighbor that isn't, and we're still getting coyotes, you know, that's the crux of conflicts, right? Is everybody could be doing everything right except for one person. So I just wanted to say thank you so much. And everybody here, of course, you know, who was interested in learning tonight, but just embarrassing Sherry for a moment since she had reached out to us previously. So thank you.
Excellent. So with that, anything further? Okay. With that, again, this conversation has been recorded. So if you're talking with your neighbors and they missed this and they want to be a part of this, or several months down the line, there's a coyote issue, please reach out to me. In addition to and of course Jessica, Vanessa, and Elizabeth, thank you for graciously giving your time tonight and providing your contact information. And whether it's providing the recording or providing access to flyers or the or website or websites information, whatever it is, we're here to help as best we can, and frankly, just make sure that we're most up to date of what's going on in the community and how we can help in addressing the coyotes, whether it's securing a particular home or bringing in the experts to fully robustly evaluate what's going on, addressing one particular problematic coyote or a whole family of them. It's one of these things where we have to address this all together as a community and as partners. And with that, I just want to close off by saying thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And one last thing. Yes, Cindy, I will make sure that you have access to the recording, and everyone will. You just need to reach out and ask. So with that, I wish all of you a great rest of your evening. Thank you so much for being here, and yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure. Take care.
Okay.